2019 FDOT Design Manual Updates, FDM 202, Speed Management, presented by Dwayne Carver. FDM 202 is new for 2019. It provides strategies to achieve appropriate speeds in each context classification. FDM 202 is primarily intended for low speed and very low speed conditions and transition areas. Very low speed is 25 to 35 miles an hour on the state highway system. Low speed is 40 to 45 miles an hour. These strategies can be used on new construction or 3R, but they are primarily intended for 3R conditions where reconstruction or right-of-way options are limited. FDM 202 has 4 subsections. 202.1 describes the general intent of the chapter and how it relates to lane elimination. 202.2 describes the speed management concepts used to identify the strategies in the chapter. 202.3 describes each strategy and how to use it. And 202.4 describes transition zones and how to use these speed management techniques to create effective transition zones. 202.1 General and Lane Elimination. FDM 201 has a range of design speeds for each context classification. FDM 202 supports FDM 201 by providing techniques to achieve these appropriate design speeds within the range. FDM 202 is based on national best practices. Lane elimination projects are treated separately in FDM 126, but the techniques in FDM 202 can also be applied to lane elimination projects. 202.2 Speed Management Concepts. This section describes the conceptual underpinnings of speed management. It introduces the concepts of enclosure, engagement, and deflection. Using these concepts, designers may be able to create additional speed management techniques to fit specific circumstances. 202.3 Strategies. This section introduces Table 202.3.1 Strategies to achieve desired operating speed. When selecting these strategies, you will need to consider the context classification of the roadway, the design speed and desired operating speed, the community's vision for the roadway, multimodal needs including safety needs, the design vehicle and emergency vehicle access, and access management needs. Each strategy in Table 202.3.1 is further described in the text. Here's Table 202.3.1, Strategies to Achieve Desired Operating Speed. To use this table, first identify the context classification of the roadway segment in question. Then find the design speed that you're trying to achieve. This could be the existing design speed or a future desired design speed. It could also be a desired operating speed. Ideally, the design speed and operating speed will be the same, but quite often they're not. And so in a situation like this, you may be trying to find a way to have them match each other through the use of these techniques. Once you've identified the speed you're trying to reach, then you can look at the strategies in this column to see which strategies will try to get you to the speed that you're trying to achieve. Notice that for lower speed strategies, the higher speed strategies are also included. So for instance, in C4, if we're looking at the 40 to 45 mile an hour range, you see that we have several tools we can use, such as roundabouts, lane narrowing, horizontal deflection, speed feedback signs, RFBs, and PHBs. And if we're trying to get to 30 miles an hour, we can use those same techniques that we used at 40 to 45, plus we can also use chicanes, median islands, and curved sections, and a textured surface. So for lower speeds, you can use the higher speed techniques as well, but you also have more options available to you to try to reach those lower speeds. Also notice that in high-speed conditions, the criteria are basically going to kick you back over to another part of the FDM, in this case FDM 202.4. We included those in this table and in the chapter because there are places in the transition zone sections where we talk about going from a high speed to a low speed condition. In general, for greatest effectiveness, you're going to want to try to use as many of these strategies together as you can. The more you can use, the better. Managing speed can be difficult. Motorists are very adept at learning to drive fast in a wide variety of conditions. Managing those speeds can be a challenge, and so try to use as many of these techniques as will fit and as are feasible on the project that you're looking for. Not all techniques can be used on all projects. That's perfectly understandable, but feel free to use as many of these as you think will fit and are appropriate in your project to reach the speed that you're trying to reach. Chapter 202.3 also describes each strategy further. For For each strategy, the appropriate FDM location is also indicated where you can find the criteria for that strategy. So for instance, the on-street parking section points you back to FDM 210.2.3 for the on-street parking design criteria. For roundabouts, it points you back to FDM 213 for roundabout design criteria. What FDM 202 provides that these other chapters don't provide is additional information that is specific to using these techniques for speed management. So for instance, in on-street parking, it includes additional information about how to use on-street parking in a way to achieve speed management. So it's not just the criteria for how wide a parking space has to be, for instance, but also how to put it together with other elements of the streetscape in order to achieve the speed management that you're trying to achieve. This is shown for each of these techniques in this chapter. Some of the techniques also include conceptual sketches. These are usually for techniques that have not typically been used on the state system or that may require some additional explanation. And some of the strategies also require the coordination with other offices, such as the District Traffic Operations Engineer. So if you're looking, for instance, at speed feedback signs, you'll notice that this requires the cooperation of the District Traffic Operations Engineer. Some of these techniques that are listed here cannot be implemented just by the designer. You actually have to go and work with the other offices as necessary to make these happen. So be sure that you read each description completely to make sure you understand who all you need to talk to and where the criteria are found to use each of these techniques. Section 202.4 is transition zones. This provides strategies to transition from one speed to another, such as between a high speed and a low speed, or a high speed and very low speed area between different context classifications. It includes graphics of the transition zones showing the rural zone, transition zone, and community zone, and then provides guidance for appropriate techniques to use within each of these zones. It directs the designer back to 202.3 for the descriptions of these recommended strategies. If you have questions about this new chapter, FDM 202, please contact Dwayne Carver or Mary Jane Hayden using the information below.